Hey guys, what is going on? Chris here with Shuckhead Gaming, bringing you my review for Table of Tales, The Crooked Crown, developed by Tin Man Games and released on PSVR April 16th, 2019 for an estimated price of $20. Of course, that depends on your region. As usual, this was reviewed on a PS4 Pro. Table of Tales, The Crooked Crown for PSVR is an RPG that brings a magical table to life before your very eyes. Determine the fate of the Scoundrels through tactical turn-based combat, as you roll dice and determine whether they overcome the challenges they face or find ways to deal with consequences when they can't. Table of Tales looks to bring Dungeons & Dragons style gameplay to VR, but does it work? Let's find out. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. Let's kick this review off with a look at graphics. Coming hot on the heels of another tabletop-inspired game, Skyworld, Table of Tales looks to take a more traditional approach, staying a little more true to actual tabletop gaming. Instead of the spinning table that flips and turns, we find ourselves sitting front and center on a single and straightforward play space. Well, maybe not straightforward. As the story progresses and changes, so does the game board, splitting into tiles and morphing into different scenes. In VR, the overall effect can actually be quite cool, and yet again reminded me that VR can truly take any genre of game to the next level. Visuals here in Table of Tales are fantastic and truly feel like they were crafted with care. Everything in sight is ultra sharp, looking fantastic even up close. To set the scene, you yourself are perched up in an old attic where you discovered this magical board. Caught up in this magical adventure and hidden away from the world, I started having flashbacks to the never-ending story. As myself, like Bastion, ignored the outside world as I guided these fictional characters to the end of their story. Yes, very dramatic I know, but that is definitely the feeling that the game creates, and rather successfully. Looking back to the game board, I appreciated the mix of true game board aesthetics and video game magic. Maintaining a realistic tabletop feeling yet bringing it to life with moving game pieces and animated parts of the world. My only real criticism for Table of Tales The Crooked Crown is that I wish developer Tin Man Games had been a little more daring and creative in the overall design choices of the game board and characters themselves. Given the experience and talent Tin Man has shown previously in more traditional adventure games and digital game books, I would have loved to have seen them really push the envelope imagination-wise. The game world in Table of Tales definitely comes off just fine, but it does still come off a bit safe and generic at times. Sound is up next.
The privateer militia, the Crown's navy of authorized pirates, has impounded what looks like a smuggling ship.
Right off the start, the sound design in Table of Tales does a nice job of immediately putting the player at ease, as we are introduced to the more casual nature of the gameplay we are in for. This isn't an explosive, action-packed experience, or one filled with tension and jump scares. Instead, it is a relaxed experience where we are encouraged to get lost in the narrative of this strategy-based adventure. Music is a large part of the dynamic of the game, as the soundtrack with its folk-inspired pirate-esque leanings quickly sets the mood from scene to scene. I would have liked a bit more variation in its themes, but what is here is very nicely done. Keeping in tone with the visual's tendency to keep the core aesthetics of a tabletop game front and center, sound effects here as they relate to the game board are kept to a minimum, often reserved for characters' attack animations or key moments in the story. The end result, in keeping with what I mentioned previously, is an understated sound mix that doesn't bombard the player with sounds and instead focuses on letting sound effects accent the tabletop experience instead of just overpowering it. Finally, and probably the most important aspect of the sound mix, is that of the narrative storytelling by Arbitrix, your game master. Voice work here is thankfully first-rate, as she is often talking, whether teaching you the ropes, telling the narrative, or giving you choices. Her audiobook-style delivery is often always on point and never irritating. All in all, a very solid sound mix that knows its place and delivers. And that brings us to gameplay. For those who play or are familiar with D&D and that style of games, you know exactly what you're getting into here with Table of Tales. Those like me who don't do board games but play a lot of video games, think XCOM or the more recent Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and you have a good idea of the combat system. And for those who still have no idea what I'm talking about, well, just pay attention. Table of Tales The Crooked Crown is a turn-based tactical combat game much in the style of classic pen and paper role-playing games. The main campaign has you controlling 3 out of a possible 4 scoundrel characters, consisting of Nuna, the sorcerer, the tank of the group, Hammer, the potion master, Thomas, and finally Horatio, the jack-of-all-trades fighter. The story and all the decisions you must make are presented to you by the game master Arbitrix, acting as one part guide and one part storyteller. As the scenes change, so does the game board in front of you. Every board is grid-based so as to indicate the move spaces. The overall premise here for those new to this style of game is actually very simple. Each of your 3 characters have certain levels of key attributes, in addition to a small deck of move cards. Each card will indicate a move that specific character can do and how many points it uses up. During your turn, you will be able to move and play all 3 of your characters until they are out of points. At the end of your turn, it then becomes the enemy's turn to do the same until there is a victor. Conflicts are also drastically changed by the introduction of challenges by the Game Master. These are often risk-reward situations requiring you to devote a player to a cause and roll a set of dice to determine the outcome. The outcome of the challenges are always uncertain, sometimes having huge consequences or benefits. As the story progresses, you will be given key opportunities to level up each of your characters, adding new move cards to each Scoundrels deck, allowing you to compensate for their deficiencies or capitalizing on their strengths. As you become more familiar with the game, you will begin to realize certain characters are more range-based while others are close fighters. Some may be tougher while others may possess abilities of the more magical variety. Like its visuals, Table of Tales does play it pretty safe and certainly doesn't tread outside of the well-tread territory of this style of game. As neither a D&D player or a tabletop expert, I'm honestly not sure if this meat and potatoes approach will be met with praise from its fans or boredom. The story itself and its character development is good, but then again it's nothing spectacular. Sticking pretty safe to characters and story archetypes of the pirate meets fantasy variety, with the campaign taking between 3 and 4 hours to complete. Unfortunately, there's only the one campaign, but replay value can be found in multiplayer, in which you and up to 3 local friends can partake in some couch gaming. The wearer of the headset takes the role of the Game Master, who will oversee and control the narrative of their 3 friends playing through the social screen. I wasn't able to try this for the review, but keep an eye out for Let's Plays showing off this feature shortly. Unfortunately, online multiplayer isn't included and is a huge missed opportunity, and for some, maybe a deal breaker. Controls are handled by either a DS4 or 2 move controllers. Both work fine, with the moves being a natural fit for reaching out and moving game pieces, tossing cards, and throwing dice. Tracking was fantastic, and I should also mention the nice use of haptic feedback to communicate moves on the table. And finally, that brings us to fun factor in my final review. Table of Tales: The Crooked Crown is a super polished and inventive take on the classic Dungeons & Dragons style of tabletop play. I had fun playing through its campaign and enjoyed its more laid-back and slow burn feel. Unfortunately, its one-and-done campaign is rather short, and without online multiplayer, it leaves only local play with 3 other friends to add replay value. I hate number rating scales and instead rate games on a basis of buy, wait for a sale, or burn it to the ground. I honestly have no idea whether D&D veterans will think that there's enough here to bring them on board. From someone who enjoyed games like XCOM, I did enjoy what was here, but found it a little shallow in the depth of its gameplay. Instead, I felt like Table of Tales was testing the VR waters and seeing what worked. Hopefully we get a more fleshed out sequel down the road. As for what we have in front of us, at $20, it's a fair asking price for the quality of the product on offer, and should be very appealing for fans of the genre, while cheap enough to tempt onlookers curious of the genre. Anyways guys, that's it for me. If you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. I'll catch you guys on my next video.